Hey everyone, Margarita here. This is episode number 8 of my severe carbon monoxide poisoning. I had gotten to the point where my brain had exploded internally and I was upstairs in my bed, and then I finally made my way down the stairs and I was really scared to move and walk. I thought moving one wrong centimeter was going to set all of that off again and my brain was going to become in that extreme state. But I didn't really understand how to communicate what had just happened, and I'd lost like the ability to communicate due to the injury. On top of the fact that I already suffered one brain injury while giving birth. So together it made a really shitty predicament. And I looked fine, I guess is what it was. Although I was very, very pale during this time. That was something that was standing out to everybody. Other than that, no one acted like anything happened. The people around me, the people in my house, no one acted like anything happened to me. I couldn't describe what happened. I felt so terrible, and I couldn't stand up, and I couldn't communicate properly, that I didn't even want to try to seek medical help because I couldn't even explain myself. And the people around me didn't understand what just happened because I was up there by myself and they were all each in a different room doing something totally different. So nobody was advocating for me and no one around me understood what happened, and they actually kept contributing to the problem the entire time this was going on for years. This continued on in this manner with everyone around me contributing to the problem. Instead of them understanding that an extreme medical emergency had occurred and I'm supposed to be in a hospital bed, I'm not supposed to be moving, driving, walking, doing anything, driving them places, trying to do dishes, or trying to do nothing. I shouldn't be doing anything except for laying there, breathing oxygen and doing hyperbaric oxygen treatments daily until this was cleared from my system and my brain tissue was sealed shut. And nobody around me understood that. So to recover to the degree that I have, it's probably taken twice as long as it should have. Because of all that, I had to deal with all of that while in an extreme state of physical distress while I'm trying to recover. And I was finally, eventually, at some point, once I found treatment, getting myself there and back. And I couldn't do anything but that. And then everything, the poison is all coming out in reverse. So you're very, very sick the entire time this is going on, trying to remove it because it's got to come out. Otherwise, you're going to stay stuck like that. And eventually you'll die once you have a large enough breath, a large enough exposure. You'll be dead real quick. So that is what ended up going on, but I did not get medical help right away. No one around me was helping me. By this time, my oldest was actually kicked out of school for marijuana. And this was the second time this had occurred. The first time was at a different school district, the one we were in before we bought the house we're in now. And then the other one happened, once shortly after we moved in. And this all happened to him right before I overloaded with the carbon monoxide. So I actually needed him home, and this happened at a perfect time because he had already done one round of this. He was already taught how to do dishes, and he knew how to take care of the baby and change a diaper and feed him. And he already had those skills from the first round of being kicked out of school when I wasn't all that unwell. I was unwell, but not to the degree I was at this point. I wouldn't have been in a place to teach him at this point. So he had already done one round of that and knew how to take care of all these things. And so he was on baby duty and on dinner duty and toilet cleaning duty and bathroom, shower duty. Like, I didn't have a choice. I couldn't do any of these things. I couldn't stand up. It took like 4 years before I ever incorporated one load of laundry into my life. Almost 4 years before I did one load of dishes. That had gone on for a really long time, and I actually needed him home during that time, and he was home already. So it was perfect timing that he was already here at that time. And at some point he did go back to school physically, and I don't know if it was just like the end of that school year or if he had went back and attended the following year maybe. I'm not too sure, but he did go back for a short period of time. And during that time, it was like really hard for me to get through each day because I was so close to death and I was here alone with the baby, and we were both near death, suffocating and suffering, that I would just be like barely holding on and out of consciousness all day. And he'd come through the door, around 3 o'clock or whatever. He'd come through the door, and I'm just like, oh, I was never so thankful to see him all of that time. Like, I'm like, thank God you're home every day. Thank God you're home. Like, I didn't know what to do. I was in a very extreme state without medical treatment. So from that point forward, that's pretty much how it stayed. I did try to seek treatment at a hospital shortly after this and several other times during this. So before I found the private center, I think it was about a total of 22 between emergency rooms and in different hospitals and specialists. I still did not receive treatment. And I had actually given up seeking treatment twice. And I said, you know what? I can't do this anymore because I'm not even going to be alive. I was so close to death that just traveling to and from there and getting one breath of carbon monoxide and them arguing with me in the state that I was in, and I was in extreme physical distress, extreme suffocation, all these severe symptoms at once, extreme brain swelling, and they were just acting like none of that was going on, and I couldn't communicate the severity of what had actually happened and where I was in that moment. When I was trying to explain it, I'm trying to tell them what happened to get me where I was in the current, and they were acting like I wasn't acclimated to day and time, when that's not at all what I was trying to say. Like, I'm trying to say this incident happened and I've been stuck like that since that day. This is still going on. It's extreme still, and they weren't getting that. So that was an issue. And then some of them just thought I had a mental disorder, and a couple times my mother did insert herself. And like I said, she has Munchausen by proxy. She would insert herself in things when she'd wait for them to happen or cause them directly. She waited for this to happen. She happened to be their employee. She inserted herself. She managed to get false information entered into my medical file along with my child's. Just with her badge hanging from her neck saying she's my mother, all based on title, giving credit where credit is not due. She has no part of my life, and these people are just taking whatever she says wholeheartedly and leaving us for dead. So we were left with no treatment each time. This had occurred all those times, and I literally gave up twice. And I knew if like seeking treatment was actually, it was causing more harm. I knew I wasn't getting anywhere. This is impossible. I inched closer and closer to finding treatment and breaking through the entire system and figuring out why this is happening. I did get to the very bottom of things and what's going on planet Earth. Like, I got all the way to the bottom. So I see the entire bigger picture of the entire world and then some. So most people, there's a lot of people out there who are not ready to receive a lot of the information I have. And that's totally fine. You can view the videos of whatever you are ready to receive based on title, I guess you could say. Because I'll get more into that stuff down the line. I don't want to jumble anybody's head up too much at this point. I just want to get the main story out right now, and I'll go back and I'll talk about some of these things, but I have information that the rest of the world needs, and it's going to change many lives when I do start talking about what I have to say. And this is just the main injury, the main story, what started all of this, where I'm at right now. So I guess stay tuned for the future videos where I am going to be exposing a lot of agencies, people, corruption on planet Earth, corruption within my life directly. Yeah, that's kind of intertwined, I guess you could say. Because I've been under attack my entire life, actually. I did not know this until a few years ago, but I've basically been under attack since I was born. So that's still currently going on. And I'll get more into that in a little bit, but yeah, like after I had came down the stairs and my brain had broken through and it had swelled, it was such an extreme relief from it being pressed against my skull for the pit. It was like almost 2 weeks where it was pressed like that. It was a different feeling. It was still an extreme state of emergency, but it was a different feeling than what I was experiencing initially. So that confused me even more. And then just not understanding how severe of a brain injury these two incidences were, and with no like medical help, it just made it worse. It just, I couldn't describe it. I couldn't talk. I didn't know like what to do. I knew I could barely sit up or stand up. So I just kept laying down. All I did was lay down, and the people around me still like weren't understanding what had actually happened. And what it was is the blood-brain barrier broke through. It broke all the way through in my entire head, all the way around. And that usually does not happen to anybody. And if it does, they generally don't live to talk about it. So I'll get more into that subject alone on several videos by itself in the future on the blood-brain barrier and what it does and what it's for and what's actually going on in the world and why it's being compromised in a lot of young kids and babies. I mean, everybody, but more so in young kids and babies. So I'll get more into that in the future because I have a lot of information on that as well. But I was just so messed up. I stayed that way. I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't have one breath of carbon monoxide. I wasn't receiving treatment. I was in extreme state of emergency, extreme state of physical distress, which was then causing like mental and emotional distress because I can't communicate what's going on and it's very extreme. And then the pain, the physical pain it was causing with the sounds the people around me were making and what was going on. So all of that put together, it was, like I said, like living in hell. There's no other comparison. So, I did end up going back to work that following weekend, and I was barely alive. I don't even know why I tried to do this. It's because I needed every dollar at this point. They had caused me to need every dollar. And I needed that money to keep things going. And you know what? If I had not gone back, I would have never probably figured everything out to the degree that I have. But after going back that following weekend, after this all happened to me, everything had come out from the other employees' mouths of what had been going on that previous week while I was gone. And all the other 6-7 employees that had a massive migraine and all had to go home at the same time. And all of the other medical issues. All of a sudden, all these people had a one-day, very extreme, urgent situation health-wise. And it basically came out that they'd been working on the ventilation system. All of these things came out about, they were operating without it working at all. They were told to shut the carbon monoxide alarm off. All of these things came out that following weekend. So as soon as I came back, all of this information, like shortly after returning, I want to say it was that Saturday, everything came out. So at this point, now I'm figuring out what's going on. The light bulb starts going off. I'm near death still. I'm in need of immediate treatment after what had just happened. I'm still picking up I actually had my notebook and my pen, and I'm like writing it down in my book, in my server book. I was writing down what information I was hearing from the people around me in that moment, because I was keeping a log at home too already, trying to figure this out. So now I'm like writing this stuff down. I'm trying to figure out, how am I supposed to get treatment? This is their fault. I need to be removed from here. I need payment. I need my medical bills paid. I did try to seek treatment twice already. I need my bills paid, the medical bills paid. I need workers' comp. Like, you have destroyed my life. This has been going on for a couple years. I'm thinking, because why am I not back to work? This is not my normal form of employment. I'm way more high functioning than this. There's several things wrong at this point. All of these red flags are going off. They've caused everything. Now I'm trying to figure out how I'm supposed to get the workers' comp out of them when they're standing there in front of my face covering it up. So I continued to stay in the building, and I didn't know enough about carbon monoxide at this point. Like, I really needed to be removed from the building. You have to have zero, especially when you're in that state. You're supposed to be laying down, breathing oxygen, doing treatments. You're not even supposed to be doing anything. Not standing, not driving, not trying to figure anything out, not working, none of that. But at this point, it was so extreme, and I had already died and came back, and I knew, like, I was not far from dying again. And so carbon monoxide is allowed in restaurants to a certain degree. Like, every state has different laws. So, you can look into your own state's limits for all of that. But the reason they were allowed to stay open and say that they just kept saying there was no carbon monoxide. It's not that there was none. It's that it was under the legal limit of 30 parts per million for the 8-hour period is what it was at one point, because sometimes it was not under that legal limit. It didn't matter. I was already overloaded with it. We couldn't have any. Me and my son both could not have any at this point. He had already been born. He was almost 2 at this point, but he had already picked up little bits along the way. It was causing further problems. It was still kind of going on for just a little bit at that time. But us not receiving treatment and us being together the majority of the time, having little tiny exposures together, it was very obvious that we were suffering from the same exact thing at the same exact time. Once I did figure all that out. So, in that building, there I was trying to piece it all together. Ding, ding, ding. I'm writing this down, writing that. I'm trying to catch them, and they're just acting like they did nothing wrong. And I'm just thinking, like, well, how can they be open? Because then I'm still questioning my mind at this time in an extreme state of confusion and brain swelling and suffocation. Like, how can they be open? How is that legal? And that's when you have to look into what limits are allowed. It doesn't matter. Someone's overloaded with it. They've got to be removed. There can't be any. It doesn't matter that they're trying to say there's no carbon monoxide. It was never zero. It was some readable amount. Didn't matter. I was already overloaded. But then they worked on the ventilation system. So instead of it being like 85 parts per million, the way it was, I don't know, it's probably even higher than that at one point. Instead of it being that, and then they work on it, and then it's like 20 parts per million. That still doesn't matter. Like, I'm so overloaded with it at this point. And then each time I'm going in there, I'm having more delayed symptoms a day or two later. And this went on for a little bit longer while I was trying to gather the information and get the workers' comp out of them, which never actually happened. And I ended up being forced to remove myself from the building, realizing there was never zero in there. Once I figured that out, I completely removed myself on my own after, you know, trying to catch them in the act and what they were doing. And then I wasn't able to, I removed myself because I knew I was about to die. I was on the verge of dying. So I removed myself, and I'll come back with another one and talk about more. Thanks. Bye.